In 1996, a little-known movement in Afghanistan suddenly swept across the country, capturing Kabul and declaring a new regime, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, led by the Taliban. Their rise was rapid, their rule strict, and their presence quickly became a source of global concern, especially for the United States. But why did the Taliban's sudden rise in 1996 set off alarms in Washington? To understand this, we need to trace the origins of the Taliban, their ideology, and the geopolitical stakes that made America pay close attention. Part 1. The background: Afghanistan before the Taliban. To understand the Taliban's rise, we must first look at Afghanistan in the 1980s and early 1990s. The Soviet invasion 1979 to 1989. For nearly a decade, Afghanistan was a battleground between Soviet forces and Afghan resistance fighters known as the Mujahideen, with support from the United States, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. The Mujahideen waged a guerrilla war that eventually forced the Soviets to withdraw in 1989. Civil War 1992 to 1996. After the Soviet withdrawal, Afghanistan descended into chaos. Different Mujahideen factions, once united against Moscow, now fought each other for control of Kabul. The country was fragmented, violent, and unstable. Ordinary Afghans were exhausted by warlords, corruption, and endless bloodshed. This created the conditions for a new movement that promised order, justice, and stability. That movement was the Taliban. Part 2. Who were the Taliban? The word Taliban means students in Peshawar. The group originated among young Afghan refugees and religious students in Pakistan's madrasas, many of them raised in camps after fleeing the Soviet war. Key characteristics of the Taliban: rooted in Deobandi Islamic teachings, mixed with Pashtun tribal traditions, promoted strict Sharia law as their guiding principle, advocated for ending warlordism and corruption, initially gained popularity by promising law, order, and security in a country torn apart by violence. Their leader was Mullah Muhammad Omar, a former Mujahideen fighter who became a spiritual figure for the movement. Part 3. The rise of the Taliban, 1994-1996. The Taliban first emerged in southern Afghanistan in 1994. Their breakthrough came when they captured the city of Kandahar, disarming local warlords and gaining support by opening roads and ensuring safe travel. In 1995, they advanced northward, capturing key cities and gaining followers. By September 1996, the Taliban seized Kabul, overthrowing the government of President Burhanuddin Rabbani. They declared the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan with Mullah Omar as the supreme leader. The takeover was shocking in its speed. Within just 2 years, a relatively unknown group had taken control of most of Afghanistan. Part 4. Life under Taliban rule, once and power. The Taliban imposed their interpretation of Islamic law. Strict social rules. Women were banned from working, going to school, or leaving home without a male guardian. Men were required to grow beards, and cultural activities like music and cinema were outlawed. Religious police, a system of enforcers, monitored behavior, punishing those who disobeyed rules. Sharia justice, public executions, amputations, and floggings were carried out as punishment. While many Afghans welcomed the initial stability, the harshness of Taliban rule quickly became infamous around the world. Part 5. Why the U.S. was concerned. The Taliban's rise in 1996 drew global attention, but why did it especially concern the United States? 1. Human rights violations. Reports of brutal restrictions on women, minorities, and civil society alarmed Western governments. The Taliban's governance was viewed as a major step backward for human rights. 2. Regional stability. Afghanistan's strategic position, bordering Pakistan, Iran, China, and Central Asia, made it critical for U.S. interests. A radical regime at the heart of Asia threatened to destabilize the entire region. 3. Terrorist safe haven. Most importantly, Afghanistan, under the Taliban, became a sanctuary for extremist groups, including al-Qaeda. In 1996, Osama bin Laden returned to Afghanistan from Sudan. The Taliban provided him with protection, training camps, and freedom to organize. Bin Laden soon issued declarations of jihad against the U.S., making Afghanistan the hub of global terrorism. 4. Pipeline and energy interests. During the 1990s, U.S. energy companies were exploring pipeline projects in Central Asia. Instability in Afghanistan under the Taliban complicated these efforts, raising both economic and security concerns. Part 6. The U.S. response in the 1990s. At first, U.S. officials were cautious, even holding limited talks with the Taliban. But as reports of human rights abuses and ties with al-Qaeda deepened, Washington's stance hardened. 1997, the U.S. refused to recognize the Taliban government. Only Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE officially did. 1998, after al-Qaeda bombed U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, the U.S. launched cruise missile strikes on training camps in Afghanistan. 1999, the United Nations imposed sanctions on the Taliban for harboring Osama bin Laden. By the late 1990s, U.S. policy toward the Taliban had shifted from cautious engagement to outright hostility. Part 7. The World in 1996 versus what followed. The Taliban's rise in 1996 was not just about Afghanistan. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in global security. It gave al-Qaeda a base of operations. It changed how the U.S. approached terrorism and Middle Eastern politics. It set the stage for the 9/11 attacks in 2001 and the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. In hindsight, the U.S. concerns in 1996 proved what began as worry about a radical regime in Kabul became the prelude to 2 decades of war. Part 8. Legacy and historical significance. Looking back, the Taliban's capture of Kabul in 1996 was more than a local power shift. It was the moment Afghanistan entered a new era, one that tied directly into global terrorism, American foreign policy, and the wars of the 21st century. For Afghans, it was the start of years of strict rule and international isolation. For the United States, it was the beginning of a security challenge that would dominate world politics. The Taliban's rise in 1996 seemed sudden, but it was the result of decades of war, instability, and global rivalries. For the United States, their emergence posed not just a regional challenge but a global threat, one that foreshadowed the tragic events of 9/11 and a new era of conflict. To understand the world we live in today, we must look back to that moment in 1996, when the Taliban first claimed power and the U.S. realized the stakes of ignoring Afghanistan.